Lincoln on a Tuesday. It ain't changing. It'll never change if I have my way. Sean Salisbury joins us each and every Tuesday. Happy New Year, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing good. Happy New Year to you guys as well. Thank you.
Hey, let's start before we get to the NFL. I think you and I talked about it. Maybe we didn't. I'm a huge Florida State honk.
Yep.
I might be the one FSU honk in the country that thinks they got screwed, but the committee weirdly got it right. And that has nothing to do with Georgia for me. Obviously, they kind of boycotted that game. But I think as much as I hate the committee and everything they stand for, boy, did we have a couple of really good semifinal games, Sean.
There's no doubt. Number one, we can't judge Florida State's body of work by what you saw. When 25 to 30 guys opted out, it was a hall pass for Georgia.
Yep.
Georgia has the argument that that they're one of the four best teams, but when you lose in a conference championship, they don't have the argument that the committee got it wrong because they didn't. So Florida State, listen, they were once those guys opted out, you knew it was going to be a rough one, and it was. But that doesn't take away the respect that we should have for the season Mike Norvell and Florida State put together. And those kids who got their ass kicked, it still meant a lot to them. They didn't want to go lose, and Georgia's pretty good. But you're right. Those four teams that play, what else do you want? It came down to the final play in both games. The final play in both games, and we had everything. Bad calls by coordinators, dumb decisions by players, catching a punt at your 2. Then we had people we had trick plays. We had what was Washington thinking, not kneeling down instead of handing off, you risk injury, and then you give them 45 seconds to get them back in the game. Why throw 4 plays into the boundary if you're Texas? Why is Milroe not on the edge? And if he was supposed to, why wasn't he reading it? Centers snapping it low, guys dropping balls, guys making catches. Michigan's front dominating at the line of scrimmage. I mean, we had everything you wanted. It came down to the final play in both. Yeah, you're damn right we got it. Now we got physical Michigan, who's really, really talented against the most talented passing offense in the country. And we're in for a hell of an next month. I loved what we saw last night. It was a blast to watch.
Sean, want to ask you about that Texas-Washington finish. I'm with you. I'm like, why aren't they taking a knee? So they didn't. They run. The guy gets hurt, which I feel for him. But is that a rule flaw? I didn't quite understand why the clock stopped. Usually that's done if the other team does it to avoid having the guy fake the injury to stop the clock. Obviously, Texas refused the 10-second runoff. Why wouldn't that start again for the offense was the team that got hurt? That was a weird snafu. Is that a rule flaw there?
Right. I don't think so. I mean, the injury where the game has to stop due to injury it wouldn't have mattered. Now, if it's your own team and you're right, the 10-second runoff and it works against you and you can refuse it like Texas did, but the reason the clock stops is because the game was stopped by injury. At first, if you don't understand the rule, the thing I think about is, all right, once the guy's taken off the field and everybody's on the field, when they're in the huddle or stand at the line of scrimmage, you're like rolling the clock again. But it's like when a ball goes out of bounds or an incomplete pass inside, in the fourth quarter, the clock stops. So I don't know if it's a rule flaw, but I liked it because you know what? If you wanted a close game, it bought you 40 more seconds for us to enjoy. But man, were they, at 13 points, you think this is over, and then you can't do the right thing, and then you have a penalty, and then on the punt, you get another penalty. I mean, it was crazy. And then 2 great plays down the stretch by Texas to get them in position, and then 4 balls ran into the boundary. You throw 4 balls into the boundary. It made no sense to me, and Sark's one of the best play callers on the planet. Players and coaches, I hate to say this, they do choke, and I think at times you get a little too cute, and sometimes you get a little too safe. And I think it happened for both teams that lost in the end.
Sean Salisbury with us. I want to see if you're with Jason and I. We actually both agree. The committee, we understand the committee's thinking in eliminating Georgia. We also probably disagree with their thinking in eliminating Georgia. Let me ask you this. If you throw Georgia in for either Alabama or Texas, Jason and I are both putting our money on Georgia winning the national championship, and I'm curious which team you'd pick in this scenario.
I would have, going into this weekend, as they were the 6th ranked. They were ranked 6th, right?
Yeah.
Am I right with Georgia?
Yeah.
6th, yeah. Florida State 5. Yeah. I would have, if you'd have said they're going to play every team in front of them, I would have taken Georgia and 6 ways to Sunday and twice on Sunday. I still think, and while I Michigan's very similar to them because of their physicality. But Kirby Smart and the buy-in he gets, Georgia is one of the 4 best teams in America. Make zero mistake about it. And I would have made them the favorite in every game, even after Alabama got them in the SEC championship game. I still think they're as good a team as we have in America. But unfortunately for the system, now we'd have found out next year, which is going to water it down a little bit. And some people are going to be happy, but we'll never talk about the playoff like we're talking about it now. Last play of the game in both games, like I said, and to 4 teams. Now in the debate, the argument is Georgia, do they belong? And now we've got one hell of a national championship setup. So, yes, there's no doubt in my mind that I'd be planning on Georgia playing next Monday if they were in this final, yes.
Sean, want to transition to the NFL. Niners won. I know you've been big on them. They get the 1 seed. Week 18, they can kind of dictate how they want to approach it, but they also know they've got the bye after that. I don't know if concerning would it be if you're Kyle Shanahan. How protective do you want to be of not losing your rhythm of the season, but also being as healthy as possible for what they hope to be a Super Bowl run?
It's like being the first pick of the draft. What else do you got to playing won't help. So I don't want to be the 6th pick of the draft. I want to be the first pick. If you could fluctuate with, where you're going to be seated, it's one thing. You're the number 1 seed. I also, on the other side of this, guys, I don't like 3 weeks off of competitive. I hate it. I absolutely despise it. If you got a twinge in your hamstring, your ankle sore, do not play them. But if you're healthy, I at least want to play them some. A couple series, get out 14-3. I'm going to protect them and be smart, try to keep them out of harm's way. And I know some like the philosophy, don't play them at all, play all your backups, and that's fine. And I don't believe in football in game-to-game momentum. I don't. I believe it's confidence. All that momentum's fine and dandy until you run into somebody who punches you in your throat, and then that momentum ends in game-to-game. I do believe in game-to-game confidence, and the 49ers should be confident, and I want them healthy, but I don't think about it. You would have to give all the backups a lot of work this week, so you miss this week. You miss the next week because you got the bye week, and then you're playing the week after and the third week. That's training camp. That's 3 weeks without competitive, hardcore football. Timing matters. Offensive line timing. Fresh legs matter too. So I think it's a fine line. I'm not a big believer. I would play my starters. If they're healthy, I would get them some kind of rhythm just to play, just to get a little competitive fire and get them out. And if you're losing 21-0 in the middle of the first quarter, then get them out too. But I like a feel-good feeling, and I don't want to be away from football that long. Think about that. That's 3 weeks. I do not subscribe to not playing your starters for 3 weeks, because that's what it ends up being when you got the bye week. I would play them some, and if you got any kind of injury or you're hurt, your butt is sitting. I'm not risking that.
Sean, which do you have an easier time doing? Finding an AFC team that can stand in Baltimore's way to Vegas, or an NFC team that can stand in the Niners' way to Vegas?
To me, it's the NFC. I have Baltimore Final Four, and San Francisco going to the Final Four and getting to the Super Bowl. So, it's wacko. Like, there's the major weakness. The Dolphins' secondary and the way they let people run through the secondary was atrocious. Their defense this past week, they're not physical enough for me. And yet they're still explosive offensively. Buffalo, I don't know which Buffalo showed up. The last 5 weeks, Buffalo, dangerous. Cleveland with a backup quarterback with Flacco's playing well. So there's a lot of ifs. I just think the NFC, as far as good teams, are deeper. I think Detroit can beat anybody. Dallas can beat it. We're waiting for Philadelphia to get back. And after what Baltimore did to San Francisco, in San Francisco, when both of them were well-armed and ready to go, I think you're going to have a tougher time. If you said, Sean, you had to lay $100,000 down on either San Francisco or Baltimore to get through this with I don't want to say easy, but easier run, who would I bet it on? I would bet it that Baltimore is you're going to have to play out of your mind to beat them. I love Todd Monken. I thought he was going to be one of the 5 best gets this offseason, and I think he's validated that. Give me Baltimore as a heavier favorite than San Francisco in the NFC.
That's Sean Salisbury. Cannot wait to talk NFL playoffs with him throughout. And I'm sure other things and other sports will come up as well, including the next time we talk, we'll be talking about your college football national champion. Glad you had a great Christmas, a better New Year. Here's to you and yours in 2024. Thank you so much, brother.
Epic year ahead, buddy. I can't wait. Thank you. Appreciate everything.
All right, take care. That is Sean Salisbury. I really want to I'll do it next week. He's such a Raider fan. I want to ask him about Jim Harbaugh and if he thinks he's going to the Vegas Raiders. We'll take a break when we come back. 4 down territory, best and worst, single, individual, team,